There's a version of you that has already tried to quit that addiction, or that habit that's destroying you. Maybe more than once, maybe more times than you'd like to admit. And every time something happened, not because you're weak, but because no one ever showed you what you were really facing. In this video, I'm going to show you a system composed of 3 pillars that will help you break any bad habits you may have. And this system is much simpler than you imagine. In 1945, a group of engineers inside a destroyed Toyota factory received a nearly impossible task: to rebuild a production line with almost no resources, no budget, and a workforce of limited resources. Inefficient. They couldn't start over from scratch, so they did something which most people would consider complete madness, and these engineers, they didn't make one big change. They made thousands of small changes, one per day, per worker, per station. Tiny adjustments, microscopic corrections. Changes so small that individually, each one seemed completely meaningless. Within a few decades, Toyota has become the most efficient automaker in the world. Don't think it was easy. Toyota went through many difficulties. In 1950, the company almost went bankrupt, but the system they created became consolidated by the end of the 1960s. This shows us that when we want to achieve something extraordinary, we need to use strategy, intelligence, and consistency. The principle behind this recovery has a name, Kaizen. And this principle, beginning, it was never designed solely for factories. There is a second concept, older, more obscure, that most people in the West have never heard of. And this concept, it comes from the world of Japanese martial arts. It describes the 3 stages that every master goes through before true mastery becomes second nature. From Shuhari. And there is a third piece, not Japanese but also in a different way. As this piece, it comes from a neuroscience lab at MIT, where researchers in the 1990s observed rats running through a maze. What they discovered reconstructed everything we thought we knew about why habits form, why they break, and why almost every conventional approach to behavior change is attacking the wrong target. 3 pieces, 3 layers of the same problem. Today I'm going to teach you how to use this system to break any bad habits and build good ones through the story of a man who needed to learn these 3 layers the hard way. His name is Cameron. He is 28 years old. He lives in Boston. And 6 months ago he had everything, or close enough to everything that losing still left a mark. A job he was good at, a relationship that seemed solid, a life that from the outside seemed to be going somewhere. Then it started to fall apart, not all at once, piece by piece. The way most things fall apart when what held them together wasn't strength but distraction. This channel is for people who have already understood that the real battle is never against the habit. It's against the version of yourself that still believes you need it. If you are one of those people, subscribe to the channel. I also invite you to like the video and leave a comment below. This helps the channel reach new people. Now let's get to the content. Chapter 1, The Loop. Cameron did not consider himself someone with a problem. This is important to understand, because the people who most need to hear what this video has to say are almost always the ones who least believe it applies to them. They own. He was a UX designer at a tech company in Boston. Good at what he did, the kind of good that makes managers put their name on things. He had a girlfriend named Priya, who worked in healthcare, patient and warm, who had told him more than once in a low voice that she was worried about him. I listened to what she was saying, just not I was listening. But I didn't understand. Here's what Cameron's nights looked like from the outside. He'd come home, change clothes, sit on the couch with his phone, and eventually fall asleep. Harmless, common, the kind of routine millions of people live and never question. But here's what it really looked like inside. He opened Instagram. He scrolled. Nothing interesting, but the movement was automatic. His thumb was already moving before the thought even arrived. 10 minutes passed, 15, he wasn't enjoying it. He wasn't learning anything. He was only moving through a stream of images that gave him enough stimulation that he didn't need to be content with silence. So around the 40-minute mark, when the feed had become genuinely repetitive, when even the algorithm had run out of new things to show, something changed. The boredom that scrolling had kept at bay returned in a rush. And with it came something else, an attraction. Not urgent, almost polite, almost like a suggestion. He opened another app. He told himself it wasn't a habit. He said it was just relief. Just a way to unwind after a long day. Just something he did sometimes. Not compulsively, not pathologically, just occasionally. Just to take the weight off his shoulders. He believed that for a long time. And then he would close his phone, and the relief would evaporate almost immediately. And he would sit in the same apartment with the same ceiling above him, and a feeling in his chest that was difficult to name. Not guilt, exactly, but something close to it. Something with a taste of waste. Then he would go to the kitchen. Even when I'm not hungry, he knew he wasn't hungry. But the refrigerator was there, and the cupboard above the stove held a bag of chips he'd bought 3 days earlier. Found eating gave him something to do with his hands and mouth, while the feeling in his chest still spoke. He ate, he went back to the sofa. He rolled over again. The loop began again. Cameron didn't know, he couldn't have known without someone pointing it out, that what he was experiencing wasn't 3 separate problems. It was one problem with 3 faces, a loop. And loops don't break from the outside. Sand, they break from the inside, but only if you understand what they're made of. The first thing to understand about a habit loop is that it was never designed to hurt you. In the 1990s, a neuroscientist named Anne Gray Beale at MIT was studying the basal ganglia, a set of deep brain structures involved in movement, emotion, and decision-making. Her lab conducted a now famous experiment. Rats were placed in a T-shaped maze with chocolate at one end. The rats explored randomly at first, but over time, as they learned where the chocolate was, something different what was happening in their brains. The neural activity that had been firing throughout the maze, constant, high, exploratory, began to compress, to shrink. The brain stopped working intensely at the beginning and end of the maze. It only fired intensely at 2 moments, the click of the door opening at the beginning and the moment of reaching the chocolate. Everything in between went quiet. The brain had fragmented the behavior, compressed into a single automatic package that it could execute effortlessly without thought, without expending energy on decisions it had already made. A habit, in neurological terms, is not a weakness. It is an optimization. The brain learned that when he heard the click, all he had to do was run and he would reach it. Reward. Clue, routine, reward. Once this structure has been established, the brain I didn't need to think anymore. I just ran the program. Researcher Charles Duhigg would later call this the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward, and the crucial insight, the one that changes everything about how you approach behavior change, is this: routine is the least important part. Most people trying to break a habit attack the routine. Stop scrolling, stop watching TV, stop eating at night. Strength even. If you're going through a moment of impulse, replace it with nothing. That's why most people fail. Because the brain doesn't care about routine. The brain cares about reward. And when you remove the routine without addressing the reward, the brain doesn't give up. It substitutes. It finds another path to the same chemical destination. Cameron's brain wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it was built to do, finding the quickest route to dopamine when the rest of his life had become a source of anxiety he hadn't yet learned to cope with. Social networks, adult content websites. The food, same clue. The silence after the day ends, same reward. The temporary elimination of discomfort. 3 routines, 1 loop. And no amount of willpower directed at any individual routine was going to affect him, because he had never learned to see it for what it was. But then the travel, what Priya he was, although Priya told him she was leaving on a Tuesday. She didn't do it dramatically, no raised voice, no list of grievances read aloud as an accusation. She sat across the kitchen table, the same table where he ate his evening meal and avoided conversation, and said, with a quietness that was somehow worse than anger, "I don't feel like you're here anymore. I've been trying to reach you for over a year. I'm tired." Cameron said things. He made promises. He meant the way people mean promises made in the acute pain of almost losing something. Priya looked at him for a long moment and then said, "I know what you mean now." She left 3 weeks later. The loop intensified. 4 months later, his performance reviews began to reflect what his team had kindly kept quiet about for months. Late deliveries, low engagement, minimal attendance. His manager gave him a written warning in October. In November, it was a dismissal. Cameron, he was 28 years old, unemployed and alone in a Boston apartment, with nothing to do at night except what had cost him everything. Chapter 2, The Master's Question. There's a dojo near where Cameron lived, where a man named David Okafor has been teaching Aikido for 19 years. He didn't advertise. He didn't have a website. He created a dojo that could only hold a few people, maybe 20 people, and a waiting list that was never completely empty. Okafor was a kind of mentor and psychologist. He liked to help his students deal not only with the physical aspect, but primarily with their own minds, to overcome their own vices. Cameron found him through a casual recommendation from a friend in December. He doesn't. He was looking for martial arts, but someone had told him that David worked with people who were in prison, that his sessions were less about fighting and more about something harder to name. Cameron was skeptical. He was also desperate, which tends to win. He walked in on a Wednesday evening and found David sitting cross-legged on the floor reading. Around 50 years old, grey at the temples, had a stillness that wasn't a performance, the kind that comes from having nothing left to prove. David looked up. "You're the one they told me about. I don't know what they told you. That you're someone who's worked too hard to go backwards." He put the book down. "Sit down." Cameron sat down. For a long moment, David said nothing. Then, "Tell me about your habits," Cameron told him. He was expecting a trial, a diagnosis, or a protocol, but received a question. "When you pick up your phone at night, before opening anything, what are you really trying not to feel?" "Cameron, I didn't know the answer." "Take your time," David said. "That's the only question that matters." Cameron took a long time to respond, because it was simple in a way that seemed almost embarrassing to say out loud. "I don't want to feel like none of this was worth it." David nodded slowly. "Habits aren't your problem," he said. "Habits are your current solution to your problem. There's a difference, a very important one." He stood up, went to a shelf, and took out a small book, a worn copy of a text Cameron didn't recognize. He placed it on the floor between them. "Before I teach you anything else, I want you to understand something about how mastery really works. Because what you're trying to do, change how you live, is a form of mastery. And almost everyone who fails at it fails for the same reason." He opened the book to a page near the beginning. "Shuhari, obedecer, break, transcend." That's how every Japanese martial art describes the path from beginner to master, David said. 3 stages. And the reason most people never reach the third, the reason most people live their whole lives in loops they never escape, is that they skip the first one. "Which one is first?" "Obedience," David said, and something about the plainness of the word made Cameron very quiet. Shuhari is a concept from classical Japanese martial arts, formalized in the world of no theater, and later adopted in almost all traditional disciplines in Japan. It means to obey, protect, maintain, follow. The student follows the form exactly. No changes exactly. No improvisation, no creativity, no self-expression. The form is given. The student incorporates it. Hide means to break, to diverge, to move away. Having internalized the form so completely that the form living in the body instead of the mind, the student begins to question it, to test its limits, to find where it is incomplete. This is not rebellion, it is refinement. Form is being transcended, not abandoned. Right means transcend, to depart, to be free. The master no longer follows the form because it is no longer external. It has been absorbed. The master is the form. Movement happens without reference to rules because the rules have become invisible, not because they have been discarded, but because they have been so completely mastered that they have ceased to be rules and have become nature. The mistake most people make in martial arts, in habits, in any attempt at fundamental change, is trying to achieve the phase of transcending before. Passing P, she's in the phase of obeying. People, they want freedom before building the structure that makes freedom stable. They want improvisation before mastering the form that makes improvisation meaningful. They want to be the master before they have been the student. Cameron had been doing this his whole life. Every attempt at change had begun in the phase of transcending, with a vision of the person he wanted to become and a program designed to get there immediately. No increments, no form, no submission to structure. Just will directed toward a destination with nothing supporting it. So instead of Cameron starting from the bottom, from the root of the problems, he started with the most difficult part. Here's what I'm asking you to do, David said. Not forever. Just for the first 30 days. He placed a single sheet of paper on the floor. On it were 3 items written in simple handwriting. No cell phones after 9 p.m. Cell phones stay in the kitchen. 2, 5 minutes of deliberate quiet before bed. 3, an honest sentence written in a notebook before going to sleep. Cameron looked at the list. Is this it? And that. That's not going to solve anything. I didn't say I was going to solve anything, David said. I said that's what I'm asking you to do. This follow the form. Don't modify it. Don't add anything. Don't decide you know more after a week and upgrade. Follow it exactly for 30 days. And then what? David looked at him with the patience of someone who had answered that question many times. Then we'll have something real to work with. Chapter 3. The First Wall. The first night was humiliating. The problem wasn't the cell phone, this was manageable if uncomfortable. He placed it on the kitchen counter at 8:52 p.m. and went to sit in the living room. What he hadn't anticipated was the silence. Without his phone, without the feed, without the particular glow of a screen telling his nervous system that entry was available, the apartment revealed itself as a space Cameron had avoided for months. The walls, the furniture, the half-empty glass of water on the coffee table that he had left there 3 days earlier without noticing. He sat down. He looked at the ceiling. His brain, deprived of its usual input, began to generate its own. Priya's face at the kitchen table. The expression on his manager's face at the layoff meeting, not hostile, which would have been easier, but tired. Tired of him. He thought of the messages he hadn't answered, the deadlines he'd let slip, the specific moment in a presentation 8 months ago when he realized he hadn't prepared and had watched his colleagues cover for him without saying a word. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. He got up and went to the kitchen. He paused before opening the cupboard. He stood still for a moment with his hand on the cupboard door, then stepped back. He returned to the sofa. 5 minutes of deliberate stillness. He sat with his spine straight. He set a stopwatch. He closed his eyes. It lasted 40 seconds before his mind produced something so unsettling that he opened his eyes and almost grabbed his phone. Then he remembered he was in the kitchen. He closed his eyes again. The discomfort didn't go away, but something else happened, small, almost imperceptible. He noticed it. He sat inside it without escaping and noticed that it was something specific with a specific texture, not an undifferentiated darkness, and that it was survivable. He wrote a sentence in his notebook before going to sleep. I had that feeling for about 2 minutes. It didn't kill me. He was asleep before 10. He woke up the next morning with something on his chest that was quieter than he had expected. On the 7th day, something was happening in his brain that he couldn't name, but neuroscience could. The clue was still there. The silence at the end of the day. The slight drop in cortisol as night approached. The familiar expectation of relief. But the routine had been physically disrupted. The cell phone was in another room. And because the routine was blocked, the reward, the dopamine spike, wasn't arriving. What he had expected was desire. What he experienced instead, after the first excruciating days, was something closer to inventory. With his usual anesthetic gone, Cameron found himself spending late nights doing something he hadn't done in years, thinking. Not anxiously, not productively, just sitting with his own life and staring at it, that without immediately reaching for something to cover it. On the 11th day, he made a discovery that seemed small but turned out not to be. He realized he was bored, genuinely pure bored, not because there was nothing to do, but because the things available to do, rolling, eating, consuming, were things he had decided not to do. And boredom, he discovered, is not suffering, it is information. Boredom means that the current environment has nothing to offer that matches what you truly need. It's not a problem to be solved with stimulation. It's a signal pointing to something that stimulation was masking. What was it covering? He wrote in his notebook, I think I've been using the nights as a dumping ground for everything I didn't want to process during the day. He stared at the sentence for a long time. Then he added, "Perhaps that's where I need to start." On the 14th day, he returned to see David. He sat on the same mat in the same position. David looked at him for a moment before saying anything. "You look different. I feel different. Tell me." Cameron told him about the silence, the discomfort, the boredom, the notebook. He described the moment with the closet door, the hand on the door, the recoil. He wasn't exactly proud. He seemed too small for pride. But he was telling the truth, which was something too. David listened without interrupting. When Cameron finished, he said, "You just got through the hardest part of Shu 2 weeks?" "Not 2 weeks. That moment in the kitchen, the hand on the door, the retreat," he paused. "Every time you tried to change before, what did you do when the urge came?" "I would give in. Or I would try not to give in and then give in anyway. Right? But this time you did something different. You noticed the desire, stayed within it and let it pass. That's not willpower. It's Shu. You followed the form. Not because it felt good. Because it was the form, it seemed terrible." "Yes," said David. "That's what following the form looks like at first. If it were easy, I wouldn't be teaching you anything." He took a piece of paper and drew something, a simple diagram, a loop with 3 nodes. "Clue, routine, reward. Your brain has been running this loop automatically," he said. "For years. The clue is the silence of the night. The routine is the networks, adult content. The reward is the temporary elimination of discomfort through food." He circled the word. Routine. Most people attack that. They try to stop the behavior by force. He crossed it out. It doesn't work. Because the brain doesn't care about routine. It cares about this. He circled reward. If you want to break the loop permanently, you don't destroy the routine. You replace it with something that delivers a genuine reward. Not a false one, not a cover story for the discomfort. A real reward. And that means first, knowing what the real reward was. Cameron looked at the diagram. "Are you saying the reward was never pornography era?" He thought about the feeling afterward. The flatness, the waste. "No, what was it?" "The same answer as before, below everything else. Relief, just the feeling that I don't have to think about whether my life is what it should be." David nodded. "Kaizen," he said quietly. "Now we begin." Chapter 4, 1%. Masaki Imai published Kaizen, the key to Japan's competitive success in 1986. The book introduced Western businesses to a concept that had been operating quietly in Japanese industry for 40 years. The word Kaizen is constructed from 2 characters, Kai meaning change and Zen meaning good. Together, continuous improvement, not dramatic improvement, not revolutionary transformation, continuous, small, never-ending. The philosophy emerged partly out of necessity. Post-war Japan had to rebuild with minimal resources, and partly from something deeper in the Japanese cultural relationship with craftsmanship and discipline, the understanding that mastery is not a destination, but a direction. The mathematics of Kaizen is counterintuitive. Improve by 1% per day for a year, and you're not 365% better. You're 78 times better, because the accumulation isn't additive, it's multiplicative. Each improvement builds upon the last. The curve doesn't remain linear. It curves upward slowly and then faster than the mind can keep up with. But the principle Cameron needed wasn't mathematics. It was philosophy at its core. The goal isn't to be better tomorrow. The goal is to be slightly less bad than today. David gave his a second sheet of paper. 3 new items added to the 3 already existing. After 5 minutes of stillness, 3 slow breaths before opening your eyes. A glass of water in the morning before anything else. Identify 1 moment each day when you felt the pull of the old loop. Write down what preceded it. Is that it? Cameron said again, and that he wanted more. Some part of him, the part that had always started with revolution and ended in collapse, wanted a program, a system, a 30-day plan with benchmarks and transformations, something that would seem, at least initially, to be a proportionate answer to the size of the problem. David read the look on his face. "I want something bigger. I've struggled with this for years. 3 breaths feels like... Does it seem like nothing?" "It seems like nothing." "Good," David said. Nothing is what your nervous system needs to hear right now. Your nervous system has been lied to too many times. It's been told, this time we start the program. This time we change. This time it's real. And every time the program fell apart. Every time the change didn't last. Every time the promise broke. Your nervous system doesn't trust you. He folded the paper and handed it to Cameron. So stop promising it a revolution. Give it something so small that it can't doubt it. On the 22nd day, Cameron noticed something that stopped him in the hallway of his apartment. He had woken up before the alarm. He had gone to the kitchen. He had drunk his glass of water before even thinking about it, not because he was trying. Because he had done it 21 days in a row, and the action had stopped requiring a decision. His hand had reached for the glass on autopilot, just as his thumb had once reached for his cell phone. The brain, optimizing again, always optimizing, had fragmented the new behavior in the same way it had fragmented the old one. Same mechanism, different direction. He stood in the kitchen holding the empty glass and felt something he didn't immediately recognize. It took him a moment to name it. Trust small, fragile, but present. For the first time in a long time, he had evidence, real, physical, embodied, that he was someone who could keep a commitment to himself. Not a grand commitment, not a dramatic one, but a consistent one, daily, real. He went back to his notebook. He wrote, I think I finally understand what David meant about Shu. The form was never about the specific actions. It was about building the evidence. Chapter 6. The Rye. When the System Becomes You. On the 60th day, something had changed in a way that was difficult to articulate. The battle was still there. The clues still came. The feeling of inadequacy, the silence, the exhaustion at the end of the day. The desire to escape into the numbness of the loop still surfaced, especially on difficult nights. But their relationship had changed. Before the desire seemed imperative, it seemed there was only one possible response to it, to give in to it or suffer trying not to give in. It was like trying not to swallow when something was stuck in your throat. Now it seemed like a suggestion. Loud sometimes, insistent, often, but a suggestion. There was a gap between the clue and the answer, and in that gap, that second David had described, there was room for choice. Cameron hadn't created this space through willpower. He had created it through 60 days of following the form when he didn't want to, through 60 mornings of drinking water even when it didn't seem to matter, through 60 nights of naming what had preceded the desire before doing anything else. The space had been built up 1 millimeter at a time. He went to the dojo that week with a comment, not a crisis. I've noticed that I'm no longer thinking about the 3 items on the list. They just happen. David nodded slowly, with the expression of someone who had waited for this but hadn't announced it, because announcing it would have delayed things. You just described the internship, Roy, but I still relapse sometimes. Yes, and it will always relapse sometimes. It's not about perfection. It's the difference between executing a form and being the form. The Aikido master doesn't think about the movements when on the mat. They just happen. This doesn't mean he never stumbles. It means that stumbling no longer defines him. The form is what returns. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called automaticity, the state in which a behavior has been repeated with such consistency that it occurs with minimal or no cognitive effort. A study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology by researcher Philippa Lally of University College London tracked how long it takes for new behaviors to become automatic. The answer most people cite, 21 days, was a popular myth with no basis in evidence. The actual number, depending on the complexity of the behavior, ranged from 18 to 254 days. The average was 66 days. But there was another finding in this study that is almost never mentioned. Missing a day did not significantly impact habit formation. Falling back didn't restart the process. Consistency over time mattered far more than perfection on any given day. This is Kaizen in scientific terms, and it is Shuhari as well. Form is what returns, not the absence of falling, the return. What had happened in Cameron's brain during those 60 days wasn't dramatic. There was no moment of insight, no switch that was flipped. It had been gradual, synapses strengthening through repetition, neural pathways that had been dominated by the loop beginning to compete with new ones, the slow excavation of a different channel in the bed of a river that had flowed in the same direction for years. The loop was still there. It probably always would be. Neuroscience is clear that habits aren't erased, only overwritten. But the new excavation had become deeper than the old one. When the water flowed, it tended, more often than not, to follow the new channel. Not always, but most of the time, and most of the time it was enough. Here's something nobody tells you about how habits really work, and it completely changes what you just heard. When MIT researchers had Anne Gray Beale study the rats in the maze a second time, they discovered what the rats that had learned the new path, that had formed the habit of running down the left corridor toward the chocolate, still had the neural structure of the old habit intact. It hadn't been erased, it had been suppressed. And when the researchers placed the rats in the maze after a long period without practicing the new behavior, the animals reverted to the old pattern almost immediately. Habits never die. They sleep. This seems at first glance devastating. It means Cameron will never be free. It means the loop, social media, pornography, food as anesthesia is just waiting. But here's what it really means, when you fully understand it. The system that David taught Cameron was not a treatment, it was a practice. Shu, the method he followed obediently, building daily proof that he was capable of fulfilling a commitment to himself. Ha. Understanding why the form worked, refining it for its specific reality, the second element inserted between the clue and the answer. Not the absence of the loop, but an identity strong enough that the loop was no longer the default response, so that returning to the form was more natural than escaping into the loop. It's not about never falling, it's about what becomes automatic when you get up. And that second between the clue and the answer, that new channel dug deeper than the old one, cannot be stolen from you. It may fall asleep, but it's there. And you can always come back. This isn't a motivational promise. It's neuroscience. 3 things before you close this video. First, the problem was never the habit. The habit was the solution, an inadequate, destructive one, but a solution to something real. As long as you attack the behavior without understanding the reward it's trying to deliver, you're fighting against the logic of your own brain. And your brain is more patient than any willpower you can muster. Second, real change begins in Shu, not in Ri. Not with a vision of who you want to become, but with the smallest possible form that your nervous system can fulfill without hesitation. A glass of water, 5 minutes of quiet, an honest sentence. So small it seems ridiculous, so small there's no excuse not to do it. So small that when you do it for 21 days, you will have built something that didn't exist before. Proof that you can keep a promise to yourself. Third, relapse is not the end, it's part of the process. Kintsugi doesn't fear fracture, it transforms it. What matters isn't whether you fall, it's what becomes automatic when you get up. Cameron is applying for jobs again. The nights still have their difficult moments. The loop still tries, especially after rejections, especially when the silence has that specific texture that used to be the strongest clue. But now there's a second between the clue and the answer. And in that second, there's a choice. That's all the system promises, not freedom from desire. The freedom to respond to desire differently. Kaizen created the second. Shuhari transformed the second into identity. And neuroscience confirmed what the Japanese have known for centuries. The brain doesn't need revolution, it needs direction. And direction, repeated daily, becomes destiny. If you've made it this far, you've already demonstrated something. You've shown that you can stick with a difficult idea until the end, even when it would be easier to close the tab. This is no small habit. It's the same muscle Cameron used to drink water the day after his relapse. If you want to continue down this path, this video, what is appearing now, was made directly for what you are experiencing. Thank you very much for your attention and your time. Continue your learning journey. And remember, be present, walk with honor, follow the path. Until the next video.